Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I hope that you had a very happy 4th of July. As an American, especially a first-generation American, it means so much to me what the 4th of July represents, our independence, which for all of us as entrepreneurs, obviously independence, freedom, those are things that ring true, and they're especially relevant for today's guest. I think it's so appropriate that we have on the absolutely amazing Pearl Michalson today. I want to tell you so much about Pearl. She's today's guest, and you're going to want to hear not only her story, but her brilliance when it comes to what she does to help so many other people navigate the complex world of so many things that we all face as business owners. So Pearl Michalson is a military veteran with over 20 years of combined career experience helping people use their voice in complex situations and advising team leaders on how to support those voices. It's about more than that for her as someone who is solutions oriented. She has her bachelor's in organizational communication and a master's in organizational leadership with a strong emphasis on servant leadership. She was in the PBS documentary, The Last Artifact, and once advised the previous mayor of the City of Bozeman to remember why he became mayor in the first place, to serve the people during a particularly arduous time. I think it's such a fitting episode for today, the day after the 4th of July. I think it's such a fitting guest for all of us to learn from. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Pearl Michalson. Pearl, I'll tell you what, I'm obviously so excited for you to be on the show. Thank you for your service as well, but welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you for having me on, Brian. I'm super excited and an honor to be here as well. Everything that you've done for the entrepreneur community, thank you so much for allowing me to speak about my passion and help others in this journey.
Heck yeah, that means so much to me. Honestly, thank you for the kind words. Pearl, I'm going to spoil this for listeners and tell them that you and I were already getting into the good stuff before we even hit record. And I said, we got to stop. We need to hit record so everyone can listen in. And I think the appropriate place to start is your backstory. Obviously, your bio is one thing, but fill in the gaps for listeners. Who's Pearl? How the heck did you end up here?
Yeah, so ironically enough, I am a Navy veteran. Yeah, I joined the Navy a week after 9/11. Everybody has their personal reasons for joining. And ironically, this is a good segue into who I am as a person. One of the reasons why I joined, honestly, a week after is because I wanted to be a voice for those who couldn't use theirs. And that's how I got into the military. I served for quite a while. I definitely loved what I did. I went all over, the country. And throughout my life, it's kind of been just something that's natural to me, personal to me, to be able to help people in challenging situations, to help them understand that what they're going through is temporary. And everything that we're doing, we do together as a team. So this kind of organically led me to starting this organization, Thanks Imaging, built around conflict resolution and support of individuals, which honestly, that's also what, the military is about. The Navy is about teamwork. It's about helping others. It's about working together. And I feel like this kind of aligns with that.
Yeah, for sure. I love that overview. And I love how you talk about these complex situations that we all go through. And you've certainly seen this when it comes to conflict on so many different levels in the military, as an HR executive. You are also, I always say on these episodes, I tell listeners, you are one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur, just like all of our listeners. And so you see it in your own business. We see it all the time, whether it's conflict with employees, conflict with ourselves from time to time, which I'd love to talk to you about that as well. Conflict with potential clients, conflict with clients. Things always come up. And conflict doesn't mean that anyone did anything wrong. It just means that there's conflicting opinions. Talk to us about what conflict means to you and why this is a field that you're so passionate about.
Right. So conflict to me means, there's just a difference in opinion. There are individuals that maybe are unable to see what the other person is trying to say and where they're coming from. When I got out of the Navy, one of my first jobs, I was a government contractor for Tomahawk missile systems. And in that job, I worked with engineers, and then I was a logistician. So I constantly was the individual that worked as like the liaison between the two, where engineers, they're coming to solve a problem based on scientific evidence. Logisticians are coming to solve a problem based on supply and demand, right? What you can and can't do. You might not have the parts that you need to solve that problem. So you might have to cannibalize, or you might have to find a part that is similar, that can still get the job done. And so this is exactly the same thing. People need to recognize that they're on the same team. They're all trying to reach the same goal. Obviously, we've all heard teamwork makes the dream work, but I believe that that is true. And as long as you both understand that, hey, it's not a me against you issue, it's us against the problem issue. Let's figure out a way to solve this. And I want to take fear out of conflict, because conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? It allows people to be honest. It allows people to show up and be themselves. But if you're afraid to speak, you might close up. You might go inside yourself. You might feel like you can't use your voice in order to speak out and say, hey, I'm having an issue. How do I solve this? Or this is who I am. Or, maybe assimilating into the culture isn't something that you feel comfortable with. So everybody needs to be willing to learn the individual that they're working with, understand their story, because their story matters just like your story matters. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that overview for so many reasons, especially because you already dropped one of my favorite quotes in the world. Teamwork makes the dream work. And I love that point that you made about it's not us against each other, it's us against the problem together. And Pearl, it leads me to something. Let's use some real life examples, because I know you've seen all sorts of types of examples. And I'm thinking about something that probably a lot of listeners face from time to time, which is, let's say a client is unhappy for X reason. That presents some form of conflict, which it's not comfortable for either side. I'm one of those people that even in a restaurant, if I ask for a burger with no tomatoes and there's tomatoes, I'm just like, oh no. Like that, such a simple example is even a very, very small form of some form of conflict. So life is about navigating that conflict and knowing how to deal with it. What about with those clients? Because in those moments, it's easy for us to get defensive. It's easy for us to want to prove right versus wrong. Whereas I know that a lot of this comes into listening. Well, what is their actual problem? What sort of solutions would they want? Pearl, to me, what makes you outstanding at what you do is you are a solutions provider. You're not interested in hashing out who's right and who's wrong. You're interested in hashing out solutions. Talk to us about that. What you see a lot of people sillily do when it comes to conflict, and then what's the better way?
So I think that a lot of people, when it comes to opposing ideas, right? Clients are dealing with social issues, right? With conflicts, people that oppose ideas. And so you want to have techniques in order to avoid and alleviate conflicts, right? Everybody's working as a team. So keep in mind, I would say, first of all, that conflicts are not necessarily a negative solution. Differences of opinion can allow for a healthy debate, and it allows teams or clients or in your personal life help you work out small issues to prevent them from developing into bigger issues later on. So I would say that as far as working together, when you're dealing with a situation, be proactive, address the issue immediately. Don't allow it to build up and create like resentment. Always ask for clarification. Make sure you hear what the other person is saying so that there's no misunderstanding, right? You want to make sure that they feel like they can be open with each other about understanding your different perspectives. And this will help clear up some type of misunderstandings. I think that one of the common issues, or maybe you stated mistakes that people make, is that when they're expressing their feelings, they tend to sometimes assign blame, right? So if I ordered a package from Amazon and it didn't get here, obviously we don't have 2-day shipping anymore, but it didn't get here in 5 days, I might want to blame the seller that they didn't ship it on time, or maybe I'll be quick to blame UPS when the real problem is the weather, right? So in this case, it's not about blaming or saying that somebody is wrong for doing it. It's about asking, hey, is there anything that I can do? Is there, maybe the address is wrong. Maybe there's an alternative place I can go to pick up this item. You want to come into the conflict with a solution, right? Can I give you some suggestions? Something that's constructive so that the problem solving that is mutually beneficial to the both of us. We both want to win in this situation. So we want to kind of make this win-win scenario. So that way a better solution can be achieved.
Yeah, I love that because you're revealing so many elements that make you so good at what you do, Pearl, which is you've come back to listening. You've come back to one thing that I also heard in that example is it seems to me like you have a very calm head, which I'm sure going through as many things as you've gone through, that's something that you're able to, in the face of turmoil, in the face of things maybe not going the way that we always want, you're able to also remain calm, cool, and collected. Talk to us about the importance of that, because I'm not going to lie, for all of us, it's not always the easiest thing, myself included. What is your process in those moments of stepping back and saying, hold on, let me be the wise head here, the cool, calm, and collected head here?
One of the biggest challenges is you're working with humans, right? Humans have free will. Humans are unpredictable. Humans have emotion. And in situations that can get a little heated or somebody feels a little slighted, they're going to take an emotional approach to the situation. They're going to think about how they're hurt. They're going to think about how maybe things don't feel fair to them in the moment. I ask people to step away from the problem. Before you shoot off that email, one great tip that you could use is write out everything that you have to say and save it as a draft, and then step away, and then come back the next day and delete it. The reason why I say that is you're able to get your emotions out on paper and say everything that you have to say without saying it maybe to that person, but it also allows you to go back and reflect on what it is that you said. If it was said to you, is that something that would make you feel good? How I stay very calm and collected is I tend to try to look at things from a balanced perspective. I like to see all sides of a problem before I make a decision. You can come and tell me that, there is a recipe and it needs like 4 eggs because you've been making it for like 5 or 6 years. And so you have that experience. I'm not the type of person that usually goes off of what one person says. I might say, okay, Brian says it takes 4 eggs. Let's go and look at the recipe book. So that way I have both sides. Well, maybe there's a reason why Brian had 4 eggs in this recipe because it tastes better, or it gives it a silkier texture, or, it has something to do with the density. And then maybe the recipe book had less than 4 eggs because other things were going on at the time historically. So I definitely encourage people to breathe and take a step back. And I think that my ability to see both sides of the problem and never go into a situation assuming that I have the answers. I always go into the situation assuming that I know nothing, even if I have context prior, even if somebody came to me and said, hey, Pearl, these are all the things that happen. I'm not going to be on anybody's side right away. I'm always going to stay neutral. And that might have something to do with being in the military. It might have to do with me being a middle child. I've always had to balance individuals and their emotions and be the one to stay grounded for them. So I don't mind being that anchor for people and saying, hey, let's take a step back. Let's sit here. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know why you feel that, and maybe why do you think that? And then I'll say, let's change your perspective. Let's maybe flip that perspective, because you might be thinking about something in one way, but you're not considering that there's another option. A lot of times people don't feel that there are any other options. And so they are operating on that assumption.
Pearl, I am going to call that out right here for listeners because you just dropped some serious knowledge and wisdom on all of us. And I'm going to say that's why you are clearly an awesome entrepreneur. I'm sure you're an amazing mother, and it's good to know you're a fellow middle child. It's probably why I naturally get along with you the way that I do. But I'm going to call it out for listeners because I think that what you said is something that, to me, it's the wisest of things that I've learned in my entire life. I wish I learned it sooner. I love that you're saying it for listeners here because I think everyone needs to hear it, is that you are able to put ego to the side and say, what if I don't know anything about this situation? You are able to objectively question not only all the information around you, which is what makes you an amazing entrepreneur, but you're also able to question your own knowledge. And you say, okay, well, what if I got this wrong? What if the way that I think it is isn't necessarily the case? To me, that's true wisdom, is having the ability to put ego to the side to say, maybe I don't know the answers, and be open to learning things. So that speaks to, I think that it's one thing that I read about on your website that makes me love so much about your work is you have empathetic listening, Pearl. And I think that's something that separates you from other people. And I love the advice of write a draft, but don't send it. How many emails do we all wish we could take back? So listeners, take this from Pearl. Whether you're dealing with a client, whether you're dealing with a potential partner or an employee, whatever it is, don't send that email just yet. Walk away from it, but be aware of those emotions and be able to remove yourself and your ego from those emotions. Pearl, one thing that you talked about that I want to go a little bit deeper into is you talked about not letting things spiral out of control or get worse. You talk about asking questions and getting to the root of it before that happens. It's something that, and you've worked in so many different aspects of business, it's something that I see within team cultures and team environments is if you're not checking in with people periodically and understanding them, things will start festering. And one of the analogies I like is that if you don't clean the sink every day and you keep letting dirty dishes pile up, they're going to get so big that it's going to be hard to clean them. How can we avoid dirty dishes? What is the easiest way to stay on top of these things before they pile up?
Well, aside from buying paper plates, Brian, to avoid those dishes piling up, I agree. You can get caught in a spiral of being overwhelmed. Maybe you think, oh, I'll deal with it later. You know, you might procrastinate on that simply because people are afraid of conflict, right? I think at the base of this is a fear. So I would take your fear and, in this case, take the situation when it happens. Aside from maybe writing it down, I would start with something positive, right? What do you appreciate about the situation at hand? How can you take a problem and find the silver lining in it? Maybe you don't see it at the time, right? And so I think that in order to reduce feelings of resentment, in order to keep yourself from getting overwhelmed about a problem and letting those issues kind of pile up without any type of discussion, have a conversation, get on the phone. Don't do things by email sometimes. Don't send that text. Say, hey, can we meet? Go meet in person. If it's virtual, get on a Zoom. Say, I have 5 minutes of my time. Do you have 5 minutes of your time? I really want to figure out a way that we can resolve this and you can help me solve this together. I'm coming to you for help. I need your assistance in this. That's a good way of reframing things. Start the conversation by saying, hey, this is what I appreciate about you and your skills and how you solve other issues in your work. Say you're working with somebody that's a project manager and you know how they handle complex situations that might be scientific in nature. Talk about that, right? Talk about your coworker and start the conversation with what you appreciate about them. And then say, you know, because you have the skill, I want to utilize that. Do you think we can use this to solve this problem? And then you ask them, hey, about me, what is something that you see that I do well, that you appreciate, that you think we could use to solve this problem together, right? You know, I want to show them that, like, I understand what's going on and I'm asking for help in order to make improvements in this situation. That keeps you from those dishes piling up, right? You're getting rid of them one dish at a time. As far as the emotional aspect, just recognize and realize that you're in a state of stress. And I don't want to ignore that the stress is there. In those situations, you might want to just go take a walk. Go outside, get some fresh air, step out, walk for 5 minutes to give yourself a chance to like clear your mind, and then come back to the situation and still have that conversation. Or better yet, take your coworker, if you guys are in person, and go walk together. And you guys, discuss the situation outside in the fresh air. Allow yourselves to take that break and think, because you don't want to overreact. You want to recognize that this is a stressful situation. You don't want to ignore it. Address the elephant in the room, because being honest and dealing with the situation head on can prevent you from having a lot of problems later. And it also prevents those dishes from piling up, because in your analogy, Brian, I think that if my coworker knows that we have dishes in these sinks, they can recognize how I respond to conflict, and I recognize how they respond to conflict. I can say, hey, coworker, I see you're getting a little frazzled here, or I see you're frustrated in this moment. Let me help you clear that dish. Because we've had that conversation, and now I understand how they respond to conflict. I can recognize that. And those are the things that I would teach people, how to recognize those cues from their body language, because 90% of what we say is actually not what comes out of our mouth.
Wow, Pearl, I am also calling this out for listeners. Listeners, do you see how Pearl is challenging all of us not only to be better people, better entrepreneurs, but really at the root of so much of this is becoming a better leader, being that one. There's a reason why people call on Pearl, whether it's family, friends, clients, business people. Heck, I know that I'm so grateful to have Pearl in my circle now as entrepreneurs, is people call on her because she is an incredible leader. She's the one who's able to intelligently, brilliantly think through all of these complexities and all of these things. And Pearl, I think what's really evident is I've already called out how solutions focused you are, but the more hearing you talk about these things and your thought process of them, the thing that I'm consistently hearing is how much you care about people. And it's evident in your company philosophy. It's right on your website, thanksimaging.com, which we'll talk about at the end of today's episode. But under your philosophy, you keep it very simple. People matter. And when you're talking about these, let's keep running with the dishes analogy. When you keep talking about the dishes, you're actually less focused on the dishes, more focused on the people involved in it. The example that you gave of calling out the coworker, hey, you look frustrated right now. Like, can we talk about it? That's a people first focus rather than a problem focused. Pearl, where does that come from? Talk to us about how you've developed this and why it's so important to you. And obviously, most importantly, how we can adopt that same people matter approach, because I think this is at the root of it, what makes you such a good leader.
Yes. So I think that as a solopreneur or entrepreneur, a lot of times we're starting off doing these things ourselves, right? But we need people, we need allies, we need to network, we need individuals to help us. And so if you don't have those people, if you're not able to build trust, you have no foundation. So keeping that first and foremost, knowing that you can't do it all by yourself. Yes, you might have the drive and you might have the passion to do this thing. And at the same time, you have to be able to convince others to have that same passion. You have to be able to, appeal to their ego and not in a negative way, appeal to their ego in a positive way. What makes them tick? What makes them alive? What makes them want to get up in the morning? Why do people apply to certain jobs? Why do people have favorite foods? There's some type of nostalgia that's connected to that. So if you can connect to the human being and the person and remember that, hey, they're human too, right? They're not just my client. A lot of times I think businesses, big businesses, of course, tend to forget that the bottom line doesn't just lie with their clients. They forget that their employees are also their client, right? You have to make your client happy. If you make your client happy, then you gain revenue and you make money, and it helps you survive. It helps you with your sustainability in the long term. But your employees are also your clients, which means you need to also invest in those employees. They also need to be happy, because if they're happy, then that reduces turnover and that creates a positive work environment. And then they are invested and they want to come to work every day. And they remember why they applied for the job in the first place. That's the thing you don't want people to forget. So I think that remembering when you meet somebody, Brian's not just my coworker. Brian's also a human being. Brian's also a middle child. Brian's also somebody who has a passion for making an impact in people's lives. And if you remember that, right, something as simple as maybe you don't have to go into their personal life, but you can remember, hey, we both applied for this job because we both believe in this mission, because we both believe in the philosophy of this company. And so you always have common ground with the person next to you. The person next to you can always inspire you as well in order to do better, because you're always competing against yourself. So keep that in mind. That person that's sitting next to you also has a passion, also has the same drive, also comes to work to help you, meet the same goals and get those clients and make people excited about your story and want to learn more. I know we're going to talk about the website at the end, but one thing I do want to point out is that, the logo for the website is half of, a light bulb, because ideas, right? And working together. And then it's also on the other side of it, a beacon. And so that logo is a beacon to a safe haven where people matter. And people are at the core of everything that you do. So at the end of the day, as long as you remember that you are here to become a great human being and make a positive impact through your product that you're selling, your coworker is doing the exact same thing. Your client is there to do the exact same thing. They believe in you. So believe in yourself and believe in the people that you're working with, and believe in those that you also have a conflict with, because everybody that you meet can teach you something. You can learn from even your worst enemy.
Yes, amen to that. That is such a core belief of our show, is that we can learn and we should learn from every single fellow entrepreneur, every single fellow person on this planet. Everyone can offer us perspectives that we don't personally have. There's no way for us to have all the perspectives in life. And Pearl, you did it again. You're doing it with all these answers. You're giving me all the feels, because you made me feel seen. When you talk about, you acknowledge, because you know this about me now, that I'm also a middle child. When you make me feel seen for what you know of me as a person, it makes me feel good. And that's why I love it. It's one of the things that your company does. I'm going to read to listeners, because obviously they can't see your website right now, but I'm going to read something from your website. It's one of the core elements of the work that you do with other people and other clients and businesses, is you say that you empower individuals to find their voice. To be heard is to be seen. And so I want to talk to you about that, because I think that it's something that clearly you're good at it, but I know for sure I wasn't the best at, especially in my 20s, when, for the first time in my life, I was hiring people and managing people and leading people. I didn't know how to unlock their voice, which then amplified my business. You talk about the business implications of this, is that when we embrace these things, when we learn these things, our businesses also in turn succeed. So I think it's essential stuff. Talk to us about that. What is the correct way for us to give our employees voices, our clients voices? Because we want to retain that degree of, hey, here's how we use our strategic vision as a leader, but we have so much to learn from everyone around us. How do we give those people voices?
That's a great question. And it's definitely something that I agree. I have also noticed and recognized that individuals definitely have struggled with being able to not just find their voice, but feel okay using their voice. I think a lot of us, especially in a time of social media, we worry about how we're viewed. We're worried about being judged. We're worried about making a good impression, which means that sometimes we might be okay with putting ourselves in situations that psychologically aren't the best for us. Mental health is important. Mental health also impacts physical health. So if somebody doesn't feel like they can speak up or that they don't have their voice, they might be in their head. And those psychological stressors could create physical situations where then that individual is sick. Maybe they have a lot of anxiety and they're not able to come into work. Or maybe me as an entrepreneur, I'm not able to come to work in that day and the work's not going to get done if it's just me doing it. I'll say that I'm going to give a shout out to the fact that my master's degree is in organizational leadership. And the reason why I went down this path is because everybody wanted me to get an MBA during that time. Everybody was getting MBAs, and I felt like if I got a degree that didn't really speak to me, it wouldn't be worthwhile. I wasn't going to be able to help people. Organizational communication came from being that contractor and realizing that as a liaison between the two, they weren't hearing each other. So I went and got a degree in organizational communication, but I also understood and recognized that people weren't being empowered to be and find the leadership within themselves. So I went to school to get a master's degree in organizational leadership because I wanted to be a solution to the problem instead of sitting here and saying, well, I have a manager that's not really doing that great, or I have a boss that's not, demonstrating leadership skills to me. How can I be a better leader? Well, why don't I go to school for that and learn the tools of servant leadership in order to empower those that are younger, that are just getting out into the workforce and they don't know what it means to be professional. They don't know the impact of showing up in a certain way. They don't know why they should care about it. Think about the fact that everything that you do impacts other people. And so as a person, your voice speaking up, you're not just helping yourself, you're also helping those that maybe aren't, don't feel comfortable speaking up. You can show up as a leader in a lot of ways. You don't have to be the boss. You don't have to have the title, but being an example for your fellow coworkers. Think about somebody in your life, a family member. Maybe you have a younger cousin or a younger sibling that maybe looks up to you in a certain way. Apply that to work. Apply everyday things where you might be a hero for something simple as, hey, every time I get stuck in a problem, my cousin Joey helps me with how to solve math in a different way. Or my cousin Joey helps me with how to talk to bullies and tell them that, what you said hurt my feelings. Show up to work in the same way that you're a hero for somebody younger than you, or somebody even older than you that maybe is impressed with the fact that this younger generation, Gen Z, has been praised for their ability to want to have a work-life balance at work. They're praised for their ability to speak up, to bring issues to the forefront. So in a way, no matter what age you are, no matter if you are the person in the starting role, no matter if you're a janitor, everyone is a leader in all different kinds of ways. So do not shortchange yourself. Have that confidence. Don't put yourself down. Speak positive about yourself every day, and reframe your way of thinking. That's the best way that I would say that people can show up and be their own leader, be their own advocate, and utilize that voice.
Yes, I love that answer and the examples that you gave to us. I think it's something that's going to resonate with every single listener because as entrepreneurs, you spoke to our natural entrepreneurial spirit, which is we desire to be leaders. We desire to be masters of our own domain so that we can forge our own path, not just what some company has decided our role as an employee is. But Pearl, I think you are very well equipped to answer this next question. As we come to the end of this interview, there's so many topics we could dive into, but for sure, I want to make sure we touch on the concept of ourselves as solopreneurs. So many of the listeners of this show, Pearl, it's something you and I can both relate to, is that the solopreneurship journey means that we are the boss, but we're also the employee, and there's conflict that comes there. How often do we have a to-do list and we say to ourselves in the morning, these are the things I need to get done today, and then we don't do them. And it's easy to be harsh on ourselves. It's easy to start going down that ugly path. What's your advice for us when it comes to managing that conflict within our own domains of being the best version of ourselves versus, the side of us that just says, hey, I can't get to it today. How do we balance that out?
I would say that a lot of times we tend to build a business around we tend to build our lives around the business. We need to switch that and build the business around our lives. The way that we can, don't put so much pressure on yourself, right? There's a common belief that, solopreneurs should take on all available work, especially in the early stages. And sometimes it's okay to say no. Design the business that you want, work towards that model. It's okay to say, you know what, I can probably do this part of the job, but maybe I can't do this part. Or let's just see how far we get on model A before we start expanding out and building extra layers on model B, because we want to make sure that we feel confident in the abilities of model A. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think that as a solopreneur, entrepreneur, we think about failure a lot, right? If we fail and things don't go right, then we're basically out of work because we're employing ourselves. Failure is just another stepping stone towards success. It's just another, I call them detours. Sometimes when I'm having delays or things are going wrong in my life, I just think about, I am on the road and I'm on my way to a destination and there's construction, and they'll say, hey, Pearl, take a detour here. You're still going to get your destination. It might be the long way around. It's just a detour. And so that's what I call obstacles in my life. I call them detours. And I think that as entrepreneurs, you can take that approach as well, and just, it's temporary. It's not going to last long. It's just a small hiccup in the road. It's just a detour. But I believe in you guys, just like I believe in myself, and none of us would be on this road of entrepreneurship if we didn't have that belief in ourselves, if we didn't think about the end goal and think about the impact that we're making and why it's so important that we're doing these things.
Yeah, Pearl, I love that you call that out for listeners. It's something that I've started saying, especially in my 30s, is that we always societally, we pretend that failure is the opposite of success. But I think, and you agree with this, is that failure is part of success. It is inevitable. It's one of the ingredients. You'll never be as successful as you could be without going through those failures. Makes all of us a heck of a lot tougher, gives us those fresh perspectives. So I love that you called that out for listeners, which I'm going to give you the toughest part of every interview goes to the guests. It's easy for me to ask you this question, but that question is, we talked about so many different things here today in this session. We talked about listening. We talked about the importance of people. We talked about navigating those conflict resolution skills and navigating those conversations and helping give people voices. We talked about all these different things, Pearl, but the toughest part of the job is for you here today, which is to sum up what's something that you think listeners should do from here. Thinking in mind that they are entrepreneurs, they are solopreneurs. What's the one thing that you think they should take away from this conversation and say, you know what, that's something that if I implement it in my own journey, if I implement it in my business's journey, things will be even better than they already are?
Every day is a new day to start over. Every day that you wake up is a fresh new start. I would say that's one of the biggest takeaways. If you messed up yesterday, that's okay. You still have tomorrow to fix it and make it better. So I would say that. And don't let fear of the unknown keep you from forging ahead anyway. Don't let it keep you from trying something new. Don't be afraid to have conversations with people that you have nothing in common with, because that might be where your next idea comes from. That might be where your next client comes from. That might be where your next inspiration comes from. There's a saying, don't block your blessings, and you never know, trying to be perfect, where you might be actually blocking something that's in front of you. Sometimes what's not expected is exactly the thing that you need to do. And I would try to think outside the box a little more. Don't try to do everything perfect. Don't try to go for what's common or go for what's expected in society, right? Because they don't make statues out of critics. They don't have statues for critics. They'll have a statue of you.
Whoa, Pearl, you have been dropping all the knowledge on us today. I've never heard that. I've never heard don't block your blessings. That is powerful stuff right there. It's something that we as entrepreneurs, we are faced with that every single day as we are our own worst enemy. But don't block your blessings. Trust in what you're doing. Trust your path. You've seen Pearl and I talk about it endlessly here today with our optimism that we both, of course, bring. But it's optimism through these experiences, optimism through just going for it. So for all of you listeners, I know you're going to want to learn more about Pearl and the awesome work that she's doing with Thanks Imaging. So Pearl, brag on us for a little bit. Don't be shy. Tell us more about your company, who it is that you help, what you do, and of course, drop those links on us.
Oh, yes, definitely. So we do have a website, www.thanksimaging.com. On that website at the bottom, you'll see our Instagram. You will see our Twitter and our LinkedIn soon as well. What we do is we help with conflict resolution to help organizations and help people get to the bottom of what's not working, why it's not working, and how we can get it to work. So we're very solutions oriented, as we talked about during this podcast. In addition to that, we also help individuals that are making changes in their careers or students that just got out of school with resumes and with their cover letters. I think a lot of times that, if I can say really quickly, the cover letter gets dismissed because individuals don't think about the fact that they're selling themselves. If you're just dependent on your resume, the individual that is looking to hire you for their company, they don't know who you are. So you need to take advantage of that, and we help with that. And then the last thing that we do is that we do media marketing. So again, with your story, your voice, who are you? Let us learn who you are. Tell us about who you are. Don't be afraid to celebrate you, because there's only one of all of us. We're all very unique people. And once we're gone, there's not going to be another you. So let us help you with that media marketing about yourself, about your company, about what's new. And yeah, I'm excited to be able to work with you. My team is standing by to work with you. And let's help celebrate all the ways in which people matter.
Yeah, so you all heard Pearl's approach there. She is very clearly so solutions oriented. She's someone who you want on your team and in your circles. So Pearl, thank you so much. Listeners, you all know the drill. Don't be shy. Go to thanksimaging.com. The link is down below wherever it is that you're tuning in to today's episode. Thanksimaging.com. You'll find those links as well as her social links down below wherever it is that you're tuning in. So Pearl, thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom with us here today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. This has been such an honor, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.